Welcome to day 2 of Reframing Museums. We are now delighted to welcome back to the stage Mariette Westerman, Vice-Chancellor of NYU Abu Dhabi, and Manuel Rabaté, Director of Louvre Abu Dhabi.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to Reframing Museums, the joint symposium of NYU Abu Dhabi and the Louvre Abu Dhabi, broadcasting here and streaming from Saadiyat Island in the UAE. I am Mariette Westerman, and I am here as Vice-Chancellor of NYU Abu Dhabi, together with my co-host for the symposium, Manuel Rabaté, the Director of the Louvre Abu Dhabi. Good morning, Manuel.
Good morning, Mariette. What a day.
What a day. It's a beautiful day here in Saadiyat, and we had a fantastic day yesterday. And we are here to reflect a little with you on what happened yesterday and look ahead to the next 2 days of this wonderful symposium that's bringing together people from more than 60 countries around the world. Our institutions are neighbors on Saadiyat Island, which is a beautiful natural island that, as we heard yesterday, is rapidly becoming a site of culture and education of great local as well as international flavor. It is, as I thought about it, the sort of site of cosmopolitan flux and human interest in others that we have in others that Anthony Appiah described so well in his first keynote for us yesterday. So this conversation that Manuel and I will have will get us going to the second day. And we will do it by asking questions of each other and respond in real time to what we heard. Briefly, yesterday, we introduced the 3 pillars that have traditionally supported museums and constituted their rationale and their public value. And as we said, they're also not just architectural metaphors, they're not just pillars, they're overlapping fields of action that constitute a museum, any museum, at any one time. Collections, which include temporary collections like exhibitions, buildings and sites, and people. And our first day was structured primarily around the question of collections and exhibitions and how we see a shift emerging from museums as collecting institutions primarily to storytelling institutions. And throughout the day, I think the overlap with the other 2 pillars or fields of actions was right away apparent. And today, in fact, we will delve into the other 2, as we will tomorrow, buildings and sites, as well as people and the communities they constitute. But let me start with my first question to you, Manuel. So yesterday, we looked at this first traditional pillar of collections and exhibitions. What were the main takeaways for you on that topic? And were there things we could talk about more if we'd had the time?
Thank you, Mariette. It was indeed a beautiful first day. Maybe before going deep into the content, I would like to highlight what you rightfully said, which is this meeting point between NYU AD and Louvre Abu Dhabi. It was a desire we had to do something together and indeed to start from Saadiyat Island, where we have both at heart the taste for education, transformation, and creating this kind of international conversation. I'm very pleased that the methodology we had in mind was robust enough to survive the digital adaptation, and indeed it shows when we were able to bring people from 60 different countries all together with different time frame and having these elaborate conversation. I think it's really, really what we wanted to do. Local, strong roots, but this international connection. And this works. There is this incredible pleasure of traveling through the accents, through the voices, through the time zones, but also through the offices and sometimes through the very museums and institutions our friends and colleagues are talking from. So this is on methodology. I think we really have this way of creating unctuosity of the meeting place. Then on the content, we need to digest. There were so many things and so brilliant speakers. We have extended our thank, but we will have to redo it because it was indeed a lot of very, very strong material. from academic voices to museum directors to curators and artists in the field. So everybody was, we gave spaces to many voices. I gathered my notes on three lines. So we had these three pillars, which were structuring the conversation, collection, sites, on public, on people. That was the overarching structure. In the way, indeed, on this first day, of course, we blurred the lines, but I would see my first takeaway would be great maturity on the question of collecting and ownership, which is interesting because it is one of the hot subjects today in the world of museums. And we've heard very strong, very elaborate, not all in agreement, but different voices and different point of view on this subject, and all of them were characterized by a great maturity and a great intelligence, which is what we want to do in the university and in the museums. And from the very starting point that museum is about collection, after all, it is a collection of artifacts, but also the knowledge about the collection. Professor Piotrowski was absolutely eloquent about this. This is the starting point of the reflection, and we move to indeed to this transition that museums are not the owners of the object, but they are the custodian. Beautiful words by Director Goven on this, on the pragmatic also approach, on maybe humble definition of the museum within this frame. And you made reference to Professor Appia, and I think his keynote, his first keynote, was absolutely impressive as always, with this great scholar, and museums transcend identities, and identity is not the blocking point. And this is a place of cosmopolitanism in the beautiful sense of it. And I think this is also what we're trying to achieve. So this great maturity is the first thing I wanted to salute. The second, let's say, agglomeration of ideas, which I found very, very, very stimulating, is this dynamism in the storytelling, relationship to the public, pleasure of telling stories. We had a beautiful sentence, which I've written down instantaneously by Amadi Bokoum from the Senegal Museum, who in French, he said, la tristesse des objets, the sadness of objects without their public. And this fact that indeed museums are places of exhibition, places where we show things. Our scientific director of Louvre Abu Dhabi, Soraya Noujaim, talked about the semi-permanent collection in evolution, adaptability, agility. The narrative, telling story, agility came a lot. Cher-Raour with the Biennale, Hervé Barbaret, Chris Dercon with new kind of exhibition, virtual and physical. We had many models which were exhibited, and the thing I would keep on this is a gift of ideas, moving ideas, evolution of ideas. And this is very dynamic, and this is not just a statu quo of the collection, this is the evolution we wanted to create in the discussion. And the final takeaway for me, as a museum director, we've been closed for 100 days, so there was a great optimism also on all these great intelligent gathers. And when our dear colleague from the Shanghai Museum, Director Zhigyong, said, we reopened, we managed, and he gave such a strong message of hope, of capacity to rebuild. When Max Olein from the Met is telling that in a way, even the absence of a museum is developing the love for the museums. And when we have new ways of reinventing the discovery of the museum, the Reina Sofia of Manolo Borja-Vittel, which is based itself on an hospital, the role that the museum can play to heal the society. And again, Professor Piotrowski mentioned that museums are a bridge between civilization, but also places of healing. This is absolutely beautiful, and this is also giving a meaning to what we do in museums and what we do in this place of science. So I will close on that, and Mariette, if you allow me, as a co-host of this very ambitious 3-day symposium, what would be your own key learning of the first day?
Thanks so much, Manuel, for getting us going. And I really share your views of that maturity that you speak about. And one way to think about that maturity is about the way we were able to open up this symposium to more than 60 speakers and more than 1,000 people from around the world which we could not have done if we'd done it in Abu Dhabi. So there was resilience in that. And one thing about that maturity to me was that we have in the same room museum directors, curators, emergent voices, moderators who are critics and economists and what have you. So we also opened up the museum space, which historically has been a little bit of an enclosed space because people are such experts in it. So I think that in a way, to me, the symposium began to model what we wished for it. And in a way, we were better able to do it in digital space, which is an important theme. My key takeaway was the incredible resilience of the museum sector, despite these incredible challenges that I'll talk about in a second. The determination that they have to move forward somehow, even if it's really hard. It was inspiring to me. I really want to thank all those speakers and thinkers for their hopefulness and for giving us hope despite it all. And this was true for all. It was true for directors of the oldest museums, present some of the oldest museums in their current form in the world, the Hermitage and the Louvre, to the Met, and also to the newest kids on the block, your own Louvre Abu Dhabi, the Sharjah Art Foundation, the Museum of Black Civilizations in Dakar, and even the Museum of the Future that is yet to open. We were very happy to have Laith, our colleague in Dubai, here with us. And I think we therefore received throughout the day, by this resilience and optimism, strong reminders of the value of museums, the public value, the international and local value of museums. I want to cite one more time Anthony Appiah, our philosopher at NYU, and also actually the directors in the first panel who talked about the move from acquisition to storytelling. They all gave us a strong sense of this. Anthony Appiah in particular gave us a beautiful capsule history of how it is that national identity somehow has been so fundamental to museums, so ingrained in their history in the 19th century. And he then showed how museums, can and should help us transcend that idea that culture is nationally defined. His great statements included, nations do not make art, people do. And he ended up saying, let's not talk about art as ours, but as art. And of course, it is ours as humanity, but not ours as this tribe only, or that country only, even though it is also those things. But I thought it was a really great call for the universal potential of museums that allow difference to emerge in its full beauty and complexity and even hardness. Some things that Mikhail Piotrowski also talked about. Everyone, of course, expressed an enormous regret for the loss of that value during these closures, the loss, but I would say the loss of being able to see humanity of all through museum objects in their difference. And indeed, Hamari Bokoum's incomparable words about loneliness, tristesse, and how loneliness was overcome for people as well as objects when he was able to open the American Graffiti Artist show recently. All of this really appealed to my sense that I've always had. I've always loved museums as treasure houses. My sense that museums are more than treasure houses, though. They are great machines for raising human consciousness about others. Possibly empathy, not always, but certainly awareness. They're not only places for human pleasure and entertainment, although we heard quite a lot of good stuff about that. They seem to fill more elemental needs that we have as people to preserve our shared histories and to see each other, even if those histories are hard. I thought the exchange in the first panel between Professor Piotrowski and Sheikh on this was good. They didn't fully agree, but they did agree that these hard histories had to be possible. And as Sheikh would say, that one should trust artists to deal with them as well, not only experts. Jean-Luc Martinez, in his closing keynote, also reminded us that while perhaps we all see that museums are valuable despite their challenges, they also have to be different in the 21st century. And I think that the pandemic has really brought that to the fore, as so many people said. As necessary as we all in this closed community still agree that museums are, we're all there because we love museums, right? their challenges, the challenges to their existence and viability today are very real. I thought it was wonderful to have Françoise Benhamou, the economist from the Sorbonne, give us a strong sense of how cultural institutions have already struggled and continue to struggle with making themselves sustainable. And certainly the numbers reported out by Peter Keller of the International Council of Museums were really startling and disheartening. I've seen some of them before, but that reduction in force that so many have seen, a loss of revenue, the numbers we heard from Max Verleen at the Met, the numbers we heard about the Louvre, the monthly loss of dollars and euros, the longer this continues, the harder it is for them. So that raises then the question we'll get back to today. I think, how do museums make the case for themselves, all in their individual and shared ways? And I think that question is a little different for museums than it is for universities like mine. Universities are also challenged, of course, but students are continuing to go to university and learn, even if they do it online, because it's very material to students to get some higher education and ideally a degree. It makes a totally material difference to your life and your prospects for a fulfilling, meaningful, and prosperous life that you complete an education. And of course, that's a little less true for museums, even though we think they're very necessary and we would sorely miss them if we didn't have them. Still, the direct value to an individual is a little bit harder to make the case for when there are all these other things people are worried about and they have so much competition in the spheres of entertainment and online. I thought it was very interesting, this is my last comment, that directors and curators alike did seem to think it was essential to return to what museums already have, their collections or programs that they've accumulated over time, and to redeploy those assets somehow and give more creative and broad access to them, that is critical, and that the digital space there is crucial, was very evident. I liked how many people said that the digital and the in-person experience are both important now. They're both critical, but we do need to differentiate them from each other, what their individual value is or their different value is, and also allow them to build on each other so that people are brought back to that possibility when it fully comes of being together with all these human achievements we like to look at and be with. So with that, I would say, let me pick up, Manuel, the question of the new business models that may be needed and are evolving. Obviously, these data were hard to hear. There are real challenges to mission and finance. How do you, as a director of a young museum, connected to one of the oldest museums in the world, see the future of the collecting museum, and how your programs can help create a new kind of necessity and argument for the museum, as well as viability?
That's a $1 million question.
Yeah, literally.
And you made reference to this great roundtable on a business model. And indeed, I really liked the construction of it and the fact that we had indeed through Françoise Benhamou, who is a scholar with a perfect knowledge, understanding, able to explain the context. Peter Keller, of course, with the International Council of Museums, able to explain what is happening and sharing art data also on the transversal, on completely global phenomenon. Of course, all museums are impacted by the closure. Of course, all museums are having their first source of income from ticketing. So if you close, you diminish a little bit the cost, but not that much, and you lose all the revenues linked to ticketing. So this is something which has affected greatly all the museums in the world. What we got from this transversal is also difference in situations depending on, let's say, the role of the state, of the role of the importance of the endowment. So all museums are not equal today against the crisis, and each one is trying to adapt and to adjust with, let's say, the asset, which is backing up of stakeholder, may they be public or private, maybe also the value of the brand, can it be used, we can be super creative. We had a very great discussion between Frédéric Jousset and Max Orlein on the creativity of the new revenue sources and where we're going there. And Frédéric Jousset, as a little bit provocative, was talking about taboo and we need to break the taboo of the museum and so on. And he was giving many examples. Most of them were rooted in the value of the museum as a place of authority, a place of importance to people, on how you could, in a way, monetize that. And I think Max Orlein agreed with the new sources, but his position was more, it's less of a taboo than an amplification. They're already doing it. The question is, it's not the same to do it as a diversification and to do it for survival. And I think this is where the tension can be put. So to go back to your question, in our case at Louvre Abu Dhabi, I was actually very, very, very pleased that the day started with my chairman, Mohamed Al Mubarak, who is chairman of the Department of Culture and Tourism. And his enthusiasm for the museum, his absolute necessity of the museum in the transformation of the society here, of the added value for everybody, Emirati, resident, tourist, everybody coming to Abu Dhabi, living in Abu Dhabi, and for the region. This is very contagious enthusiasm, and this is also for me the real answer. We can diversify the program, we can adapt, we can listen better to what the visitors or the customers, you call them the way you want, but people who have an appetite of us will come to us. But what is important is to start by the necessity, the raison d'être, the absolute urgency of the museum. So this is very important. And as the Undersecretary of the Department of Culture and Tourism also said in the same roundtable, talking about tourism today, Saud Al-Hossani said at first time the necessity would be for the people living here, because of course this is the only one we have, but this is also the moment to go deeper in the community reach. And then the re-expansion will come back in parallel to the recovery of the tourism roads. And I think this is really what we're doing today, our relevance amplified locally and getting ready for the international approach. That would be my answer to this very complex economic question. Another big thing which was mentioned in the discussion was in the case study was the digital acceleration caused by COVID-19. And I was thinking for you, Mariette, at NYU AD, has it been, does it resonate differently, the, let's say, acceleration of the digital on your very activity?
Yes, absolutely. As all universities around the world, in some form or other, including ourselves, have taken our courses and our research online for the most part. This was an inspiring part of the conversation for me. And again, we heard loud and clear from people like Chris Durkheim that what museums need to do is build back forward, right? And that's exciting, and the digital is so important to that. So we really heard that the integration, the full integration of digital capabilities will be essential to the future of museums, as everyone already uses these tools anyway in their daily lives. You can meet audiences where they are. And so they should not stand apart from the museum's core mission and operations. And that's long been true for universities. I think Hilary Knight from Tate Digital said it so well. This is now about processes as much as systems. It's about people as much as hardware. We have to shift that way of thinking. And that's very true for us at MWU Abu Dhabi. Universities are, after all, full of the next generation. Students are our largest community, and they lead the way. And universities are full of scientists, artists, and philosophers who have very fundamental curiosity and can help us sort this out, often with a little bit of a longer term view than the immediate. For us yesterday, I thought the involvement of artists and gamers, people from the gaming community in this conversation is very important, because now, just as for universities, it's true for museums, our future is not about replicating online what we already do in precisely the same way, but it is about enhancing and expanding that mission creatively and giving greater access to it. Universities create new knowledge. They don't just imitate what was done before in a sort of surrogate way. And I think we see that in museums as well now. So, one caution I have, several of our digital museum experts noted the ability to integrate deeper learning, which is good, with some entertainment, which is good, and commerce, which is more challenging. There's both opportunity and risk in that, as universities have also seen over time. And I think Max Verleen from the Met valuably reminded us, in general, that end users of these digital products should not have to pay for the museum, not as a whole, because museums, wherever they are public good institutions that enjoy public support, and you want to keep that going, it seems to me. The last point there, well made by Anna Lowe at Smartify. I was very interested in what Smartify was doing. Light touch technology is important for museums as well as universities, so that not every institution, one by one, invents bespoke infrastructure for itself. Of course, we're all proud of what we do, and that's important, and you want to give it its own identity related to who you are as an institution and the matrix of museums or universities. But I really think it's important to think about less resourced institutions having access to those capabilities, and large museums standing with the little ones, the smaller ones, the newer ones, in the kind of call for unity that we heard from many museum directors yesterday, which I thought was really good. Museums today need to stand together because their whole sector is at risk. It's not about one defending against the other. They really have to come together. And in doing that well digitally, by using these light touch technologies that anyone can access in a way institutionally or individually, we can help ensure that the digital divide doesn't grow. The digital divide that exists is already complicit in growing inequality of all sorts around the world. And in higher ed, we certainly have seen that that inequality is socioeconomic, but also maps onto inequalities of gender, nationality, and race. So this is where the technological point is, of that light touch access is important. I saw a lot of innovation though, and I look forward to discussing it and bringing it back to my community. So back over to you, Manuel. I might as well put it back to you. Listening as a museum director, what did you think were some of the most exciting possibilities for that full integration of the digital across the museum? And someone asked this, I want to ask you, is there risk of the physical museum losing its meaning if you do this too well?
I will answer personally, but I think the best, let's say, beautiful way of answering the question was first given by Jean-Luc Martinez in his keynote on this one. And it is a big no. Like, no, there is no risk of making the museum irrelevant. And Jean-Luc Martinez said, like, similarly to the fact that the disc didn't kill the concerts, the digital will not kill the museum. It will question the way we organize the museum. It will question the way we organize the experience, the way we manage, we cater access to knowledge, access to the physical space. All this, yes, of course, has been, and we have seen it drastically during the COVID crisis. But no, on the contrary, technology today and what I would call the acceleration of the digital acceleration is a leverage. Indeed, people get more demanding. Indeed, the quality has to be there. Indeed, we need to curate, but it's great. In museum, we know how to curate. This is the core activity. So you need to curate the digital within what you propose with the museum. But I don't think it's a threat. I think it's also a message of hope. There is one word which came a lot during the day, which is solidarity. And I think that the museum under on the network of museum under duress have expressed through technology this solidarity, and they have kept the connection, maybe amplify it. And this is why I don't think it's a threat. I think it's one of the new components of the 21st century. That would be the digital story. To go quick because we need to manage time. There was back and forth between the business on art on business, and so on. You as a Vice Chancellor of NYU-AD, I wanted to ask you, but should you teach art in a business school or business in art schools? How would you take something from that in your own curriculum?
I would say any human endeavor that brings something new and of value into the world is a creative enterprise. Stanford Business School in the 1980s taught a core course everyone had to take, creativity in business. And at the Institute of Fine Arts, where I was director back in the day, we encouraged all our students who would be art historians or archaeologists or conservatives to think about their career opportunities beyond the academy. The creative skills they would learn, they could apply anywhere. But I would say not everyone has to learn the same things. Not all artists have to be entrepreneurs or accountants also. And not all people who drive business need to be curators or impresarios or baristas, who are also curators today. So I think the key is the interdisciplinary potential that was mentioned by several people yesterday, the interdisciplinary potential of teams working together, building more resilient organizations out of our very diversity, because that is the creative strength of humanity and, in fact, of the entire museum and university ecosystem. We don't all do the same, and all institutions and people can play a part. As we begin to wrap up, I think we should look ahead to the next day. I really look forward to talking about people and buildings and sites and how they interact with collections. Collections will come back again. But I was just wondering, Manuel, if you could tell us a little bit more about what's on the menu today.
Thanks, Mariette. Maybe just indeed to trigger the curiosity and go back to the site. You will have all the session precise, and as you know, everything is recorded. So with a slight delay due to technical compression, we're putting the content online. I think we have the same structure today, which is very let's say granularity, the good granularity of experience. So we have roundtables. And indeed, we're crossing our three pillars: museums as reimagined public spaces. So this is really the place of interaction on this public, which is at the core, and which was already triggered yesterday. We have the museums as and the voices of authority. Where do the museum speak from? The museum speaks from, and I think this is very important also today when there is such, let's say, questioning on the museums, on their roles. It's because they mean something, and we will try to see that. So two very important roundtables with great professionals from all over the world. We have a series of case study on the empathy, a word you used, Mariette, which is very important on the how the museum can work with a healing society, and what does it mean, what can we do. And I think 6 or 7 case study will be very useful for that. And we have 2 fantastic keynote speeches, one by Her Excellency Noura Al-Kaabi, the Ministry of Culture and Youth in the UAE, who was very involved into the G20 and the role of the ministries of culture in the G20. So I'm sure she would be able to share something about that. And a great scholar, Christophe Pomian, who just published the history of museums. So you see, you will have many levels of pleasure and discovery. A full day ahead. Stay tuned. Mariette, maybe if you want a closing element on this, I think we're just excited.
Thank you for looking ahead. I look forward to it so much. We will end today. We're going well into the evening. We'll end with the last keynote from Sandra Jackson-Dumont, who is building a museum that's like the Museum of the Future, has yet to come. No,
she's closing it. Yeah,
she's closing it. We're going deep into the day. She is the founding director of the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art in Los Angeles. And then tomorrow, of course, we'll see you again. And Manuel and I will take up the conversation again towards the end of the afternoon tomorrow. And we really look forward to seeing you all. Thank you for being with us. And please have a great symposium today.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.